Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Food Security Simulator training and practical demonstration. We have a number of participants. And just to introduce ourselves, my name is Juneweenex Mbuthia from IFPRI. I welcome you all to this interesting and learning session that you will learn about a new tool that you can use for food security simulator. But just then to know who is with us, I encourage to use the chat box just to mention our names and probably which institutions we are coming from. And also just to encourage ourselves to use the chat box also to ask questions as we go on with the session. We have a very interesting session today, which will take around 1 hour just to understand the tool that we have. And just to introduce probably why we are here, it's a food security simulator, a tool that has been developed by KIPPRA, KNBS, and IFPRI. KIPPRA, Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis, KNBS, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, and International Food Policy Research Institute, under the CGIAR initiative on the national policy and strategies. It was launched during KIPPRA's annual regional conference, that is in June 2023. And this innovative tool will be presented to us, and it will be shown to us what it can do on the impact of the food prices, household income shock. But I'll leave this to be demonstrated later. But to start with, maybe we will have some opening remarks from our institutions that have co-organized this event for us to be able to learn and share information and knowledge. And we'll welcome in order a representative from KIPPRA. We'll have Dr. Nancy Nafula, Acting Deputy Director, Capacity Building. Thereafter, then immediately we'll have Dr. Martine Oleche, representing the University of Nairobi, the Chairperson, Department of Economics and Development Studies. And then we'll have a representative representing IFPRI, and we'll have Dr. Clemens Breisinger, a lead for CGIAR initiative on national policies and strategy, and country program leader for Kenya, IFPRI. So welcome, Dr. Nancy Nafula, to give your opening remarks.
Okay, thanks very much, June. At this point, I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of us to this event. And with us, I would wish to recognize the presence of IFPRI team led by Dr. Clemens. And I'll also want to recognize the representative from University of Nairobi, Dr. Oleche. I want to recognize the presence of our students from various universities represented, and all protocols observed. Good afternoon. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for making it to this event. This is it's a very important event to our students and also to KIPPRA. And on behalf of KIPPRA, I'd want to take this opportunity to welcome all of you and request you to engage, particularly the students, to engage. I know IFPRI will give us more details regarding the training that is just about to start. They'll give us also more details about the blogs. I know for some of the students that have joined online, we trained you on how to write a blog. I know we didn't have a big quorum, but we will be organizing another cohort of training. So I encourage all of you to register for that, because once the blog competition is launched, we hope that you can all participate and you'll all have the required skills to be able to participate. As for the the food security simulator, I urge all the students to listen keenly, because this is a tool that you may require as you write your blog, or as you write your research paper at the university. You might need to use it. So let us all listen keenly and take note and ask questions as the presenters take us through. So at this point, I would wish to end my remarks and welcome all of you. Thank you. Over to you, June.
Thank you, Dr. Nafula, and thank you from those welcoming remarks from KIPPRA. Now I welcome Dr. Martine Oleche to give his welcoming remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, June, and representatives from KIPPRA, and all of you who are here. I'm very glad that I'm meeting online a number of colleagues that I met a long time ago, like Dr. Nancy Nafula. I'm also very glad to see quite a number of my students here. Maybe before I can start my official speech, and all protocols observed, Dr. Clemens, I really recognize your presence, Andrew, and all of us who are here. But I would want to really thank IFPRI for this initiative, because for many of our students who are actually doing research, this is a groundbreaker. They will actually learn new skills that can help them in future. Now, to come to my official speech, I can say good afternoon here in Nairobi, Kenya. Receive my warm greetings. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you all to this important training on the new Kenya Food Security Simulator and announcement of the blog competition. As you may already be aware, the University of Nairobi signed a memorandum of understanding, or a collaborative agreement, with IFPRI on 19th May 2023. And immediately after signing the MOU, we had the first activity, which was actually launching the IFPRI's Global Food Policy Report for 2023 on the same day, 19th May 2023, where we had quite a number of attendees from different organizations, including the World Bank. It was actually a full house. Now, today we are making another milestone in co-organizing this online demonstration and blog competition for food security simulator, a new and a very innovative analytical tool. The food security simulator has been developed by KIPPRA, KNBS, and IFPRI under the CGIAR initiative on national policy and strategies, and launched during KIPPRA's annual regional conference in June 2023. I strongly believe that this tool fills an important gap in the landscape of analytical tools in Kenya. First, the tool goes beyond measuring the impacts of economic shock on poverty and allows users to estimate the impacts on various food security indicators. The tool is based on rigorous research and uses econometrically estimated elasticities, which allows user to derive impacts from food price or income changes on people's food poverty, calorie consumption, and dietary diversity. Secondly, despite its methodological rigor, the FSS is easy to use and does not require extra software. Third, because the FSS is Excel-based, it can be quickly deployed, which is especially important when policymakers require quick information from researchers, for example, when unexpected crisis or a shock hits. I therefore encourage all of us to take opportunity of today's training workshop to learn how to use this tool and then use it for our research. As a starting point, all participants will be eligible for participating in this blog competition. I hope that many of you will participate in this competition and look forward to these results. May God bless you so much. This is Martine Oleche, the Chair, Department of Economics and Development Studies, representing the University of Nairobi. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Oleche, for those remarks, and at least you've preempted what the tool is and what it can do. But then, before we go too deeper on why we are here, let us hear some opening remarks from Dr. Clemens Breisinger.
Thanks, June. Thanks, Dr. Oleche. Thanks, Dr. Nancy. It's great to see you. We are really honored to have KIPPRA and the University of Nairobi here co-organizing this event. A warm welcome to all of you online to this demonstration of the food security simulator and the related block competition. As Dr. Oleche has already mentioned, this tool fills an important gap in economists and food security analysts' toolbox. And why is that so? Because it's a unique combination of an easy-to-use tool. At the same time, it's very rigorous in its methodology. Now, it was in that spirit that the tool has been created by IFPRI, KNBS, and KIPPRA researchers. And in that sense, I want to also thank the developers, all our partners for this excellent collaboration. It's also an innovation, and it's part of the CGIAR National Policies and Strategies Initiative. And I would also like to thank this opportunity, to take this opportunity to thank the CGIAR funders for their support. Now, having said this, I'm really looking forward to the session, to your active participation. Please feel free to ask any questions. We care for your comments. And I'm also looking forward to hopefully seeing a lot of blogs from all, or at least many of you. Enjoy the session. Thanks again for participating. And back over to June.
Thank you, Dr. Clemens, for that. Now, I'm sure at this point we are asking, where is this tool, and how can we access the tool, and how can we get it? It's a simple tool that you can download. It's an Excel based. And just before I welcome Andrew to take us through on how to use the tool, also we can have a link probably in the chat for us to be able to download for those of us who have not downloaded, or where we can access it. And also, Andrew, probably you can take us through on how we can download so that we can follow step by step. So in this moment, I am pleased to welcome Andrew Comstock. Is a senior research analyst at IFPRI, who will take us through the tool and tell us everything about the tool and what it can do. Make sure to be very attentive so that you can be able to ask good questions and hard questions about the tool, so that you can be able to learn, all of us. Thank you, Andrew, and welcome.
All right. Thank you all. Good afternoon, or for me, good morning. It's 8 in the morning here, but we're doing all right. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and we're going to start going through this thing. First things first, I have a brief PowerPoint presentation that I was planning to present. This will provide a brief overview of the tool, some of the main features of the tool, which have already been discussed by Dr. Oleche and Clemens. And then after that, then we'll really dive into the practical demonstration. Oh, whoops. All right. So motivation and purpose. This has pretty well been covered by the others, so I won't spend too much long on this. But the idea behind the food security simulator is that it's a rapid response tool for first cut evaluations of policies or the effects of crises. It's been developed in collaboration with KIPPRA, KNBS under the NPS initiative. And the idea is that we want to look at how the short-term impacts of food price or household income changes, which I'm going to keep calling shocks after this, but shocks often has a negative connotations. It can be positive or negative in our tool. But we want to see how these shocks affect food consumption, diet quality, and other food security indicators in Kenya. The features of the tool have, again, been discussed. It's based on rigorous research. The three of the citations are listed here. One are the elasticity of food demands, the database of food demand elasticities that have been estimated with quite a bit of effort by Dr. Ecker and myself, and then a couple of other articles on some of the outcome indicators that we'll be including in the tool. The tool is currently based on the KIHBS 2015-16 from the KIHBS, but the tool has been designed so that it can be updated whenever we get new data sources. And in fact, Kenya is currently only serving as the pilot country, which is fantastic, and we're actively working on expanding the food security simulator platform to other countries, if that's ever of interest to you. Now, the whole point of the tool is that it's easy to use and based in Excel. We didn't want to make a tool that was based in GAMS or Stata or something that many people just can't run or can't have on their systems. And so we based the entire tool in Excel. So all you need to do is download the files. Your PC should have Excel and it will run. We've included a detailed user guide, which I will talk about in a minute. And then we've provided a bunch of detailed results in one of the files and then a bunch of concise results in another file so that you can output them to different reports, policy presentations, briefs, bunch of different things. We'll cover all this in a few minutes. In specific, the components of the tool are the inputs, which are the user-specified shocks that I was discussing before, and the outcomes, which is a bunch of different outcome indicators. We have gap measures on diet quality, food poverty measures, undernourishment measures, diet quality measures, and all of these are broken down by income group, and by income quintile, excuse me, and residential area, which we have defined as rural and urban, based on the survey definitions. And then in some instances, we've also broken these down by different food groups. The data set itself that underlies the tool is completely locked. All of the sheets are locked except for the input sheets, with the idea here being that we have spent a great deal of effort at making sure that all of the puzzle pieces that make the tool work have fit together correctly. But it's a very delicate puzzle, so we needed to lock the sheet so that the puzzle doesn't break and the house of cards, to use yet another analogy, falls apart. For those of you who are interested, here's a slightly simplified version of the simulation function that underlies the entire tool. So the idea here is that we take the shocks specified by the user. Here, those are defined by the DM, by the D numbers. And then we take the elasticities as defined by Dr. Ecker and I's extensive work, which are income, own price, and cross-price elasticities. We can disaggregate these by the effect of an income shock, by the effect of a price shock, by the effect of the cross-price shock, by the total price effect, by just the income effect, by the total effect. We have this in some of the more detailed sheets if people are interested in that. And then another important factor is that we use a latent estimation, latent quantities for all of our estimations. And without getting too stuck in the weeds, what this is that we have taken the household survey data, which is a snapshot in time. It's a 7-day food recall. But that doesn't always represent a household's full consumption over an entire year. And through some effort, we have estimated what we believe their latent consumption would be over the entire year. And we have actually used that in the simulation. This should help provide a much more accurate picture of a household's response to different shocks over both in the short term and the long term than if we had just taken a 7-day recall. Now, let's go to what you guys are all actually here for. Okay. I'm assuming that y'all can see this. Somebody holler if you can't. So when you open up the food security simulator,
we can't.
You can? Excellent.
We cannot.
Oh, you can't? What?
Mhm.
We are still looking at your slides.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and reshare. Okay.
Here we go.
All right. Hopefully this works when I switch between the files. Let's see how that goes. Okay. When you first open the food security simulator, you'll get this lovely formatted user guide. The user guide will explain many of the things that I have just explained in the PowerPoint presentation, but there's a lot more detail provided. There's descriptions of each of the sheets, how they work, what you should be doing with them. We have a more detailed information about the methods underlying the tool itself, including the data prep, microsimulation parameters, the microsimulations, and the different outputs. And then we have a full reference guide, including links to the underlying references if you're so interested. Now, the simulator itself works on two sheets. The first sheet, which I have here, but you cannot see the top of, is called the FSSK tool.xls. And then the second sheet is the FSSK results overview sheet. The tool sheet itself is where you are able to input your food price shocks on this sheet, your income shocks on this sheet, and where you'll get detailed output on food consumption for food poverty and hunger, which we'll discuss more in a moment, and on diet quality. Excuse me. Now these tables, as you can see, quite a lot of numbers. We have our disaggregations that I discussed, and we'll go into this in more detail. But this is where we have our detailed output for those that are interested in the very detailed results. Now, we also have the FSSK results overview sheet. Did this switch to the other sheet when I switched?
Yes, it did.
Okay, excellent. Now this sheet also has a user guide, which is helpful. It will describe all of the different output sheets. It doesn't have the methods or the references. Those are still in the main sheet. So please see those if you have any detail or any questions. Now here is where we provide some of the more interesting, not interesting is the wrong word, but the more concise output tables. And this is really where we think y'all will end up spending a good portion of your time. This is where we've taken the detailed outputs from the main sheet and we've crafted these tables. Now you'll see everything 0% here right now because we're doing change from the baseline and we currently don't have any shock specified. But here we have the food poverty rate, undernourishment, and a variety of other different indicators. And all of these tables and coming graphs have all been formatted so they'll be able to print out on one page if you want to physically print them, or they're very easy to, copy and paste. Select, you copy, you paste it into whatever document you want, whatever presentation you want, and you're good to go. So we also present graphs of food consumption deficits. These will be discussed in more detail. Some histograms of food consumption, poverty graphs, and undernourishment graphs. Now, let's get to the interesting part, the shocks. So first things first, let's say we wanted to test the results of some kind of policy or crisis that has affected poor household incomes. This could be a government policy that has transferred money to the poor. This could be a shock that has affected poor households differentially, exogenously. We don't know. How we simulate that is we come to our user input sheet, household income, and we can simply type in whatever shock we want here. This little demonstration here, if you guys need a refresher, but we have rural and urban, poor, non-poor, and we can just type in our number here. If you type in a +5, you'll get a +5% shock to income. So household incomes increase by 5%, and a -5 will negatively impact household incomes. Quick note, in the income shocks, we currently recommend that you do not exceed either 20% or -20%. This is simply for model plausibility. The underlying microsimulations, while based in rigorous research, are themselves not, what's the word I'm looking for? Not super mathematically complex, and they don't have any sort of guardrails on plausibility. So that's on the user. So you can theoretically enter a 50% shock to poor household incomes. It seems unlikely and implausible. And if you do so, you'll get a warning saying, hey, we don't think that was a good idea. But in the interest of doing something plausible, let's increase household incomes for poor household incomes in both rural and urban areas by 15%. So I type in a 15, I hit enter, and then you can either type it in again, or you can just copy and paste. It'll take a second to evaluate because there's a lot of data underlying this tool. And after we've done that, now we can go back to the results overview sheet. So here, in the results overview sheet, the red tables are our baseline values. So these will not change at all based on whatever simulations you decide to run. These are simply here to provide some baseline information if you're doing some kind of presentation or a blog and you need to talk about where you started and then where you go versus the change from baseline, which is over here in the green. Now, let's start at the top, food poverty. Well, we can see that as we've shocked poor household incomes by 15%, we've reduced food poverty. This makes sense. And this is an interesting output. Now you'll see that it's because we've shocked it through different demand elasticities, it's increased less than the 15% that we shocked it by, or we have seen, or decreased less than the 15% we shocked it by. This makes sense. We can then look at the, I should mention the food poverty rate is defined by household food income that we've calculated from the survey data and the food poverty line that is provided within the survey data by the KMBS. Now we also prevent prevalence of undernourishment. This is defined by household calorie consumption per adult equivalent per day. And the cutoff line is defined by the FAO's numbers. And I believe this is somewhere around 1800, but you can find the details in the data. Now you'll see that undernourishment has actually increased less or decreased less than the food poverty rate. Now this is perhaps, this makes sense. We've shocked incomes directly, and food poverty is defined specifically by expenditures. And so, it would make sense that expenditures maybe have shocking incomes has a bigger effect on expenditures than directly on undernourishment. Now you can see further, we have tables on food consumption expenditure, calorie consumption, our bespoke diet quality indicator, which is based on the reference diet deprivation index constructed by me and some of my colleagues at IFPRI, which we have then subtracted from 1, so a higher value is a better value. We have the average number of adequate food groups. This is defined by household food consumption over in reference to the Eat Lancet diet, which if you need more information, there's a link provided in the references. And the share of deprived households with sufficient food consumption. Now the idea here is that a household is defined as deprived if they are deprived in at least one food group. But this doesn't necessarily mean that they're totally deprived, and so we might be interested in households that register as deprived but still have sufficient food consumption relative to undernourishment. Now back to the data. So we shocked poor households incomes by 15%. So what has this done to the food consumption expenditure? Well, in both rural and urban areas, food consumption expenditure has increased 1% and 2%. But by quintile, we can see we've had a much stronger effect on poor households, because the poorest households have increased by 11.4 and 13%, and then goes down. And calorie consumption has had a similar effect. And even more so, we can see that the average number of adequate food groups has dramatically increased for poor households. It's just shown us that poor households have probably taken this, in our simulations, poor households have taken this food, this increase in income and gone and expanded into new food groups that they weren't consuming before. Now, what if we wanted to look at some graphs of this? Well, we can now look at the consumption graphs, the consumption gap graphs, and you can see where before we only had one line, now we have two. The baseline is the black, the red is the simulated impact. And what these graph is the consumption deficit gap. So again, harking back to the Eat Lancet diet, we can measure the gap a household has in their consumption between what they should be consuming according to the diet and what they are consuming for a variety of different food groups. And this graphs the percentage deficit by household decile. So this is the 10th decile, 20th, etc. So we can see that by improving household incomes, we've expanded the frontier outwards, which is good. And so households have reduce their deficits of grains and starchy staples. We have the same for fruits, dairy foods, and a variety of other things. We also have poverty, food poverty. And as we would expect, these are also by household decile with household food expenditure right here. And, we've only shocked the bottom, the poor households, which is defined by the bottom two quintiles, excuse me, so the bottom 40%. So here we see that we've improved food poverty here and here, but not anywhere really in the tails. And we'll see a similar pattern in undernourishment. Okay, so that's our income shock. Now let's go to a price shock. To demonstrate the isolated the price shock, I'm going to reset the income shocks to 0. And then we're going to move to the food price shock. So food prices are inputted exactly the same as household incomes, except we now have 22 different food groups we can shock. Each of these are going to have their own results at the household level, and are going to be the impacts of are going to be passed through the own price and the cross price effects in our simulation. So let's see what we can do here. The first example I'm going to do is a 15%. Actually, I want to do the decrease first. Let's do a 15% decrease in staple foods. I have increased it here. Let's go back and we'll do a decrease in the staple food price. Pardon me, it takes a second. Copy this, go all the way down, we'll get bananas and plantains, and we'll paste. All right, now we could either, if we wanted to see the detailed output, come to the detailed output page, where it has not updated yet. Okay, we have some changes here. I don't know why it's not updating quickly, but here we can see the total food, the impact on food consumption per capita, calorie consumption equivalent, and calorie consumption per adult equivalent. There we go. Now it's updated. Okay, I don't know why it's running slow today. Here we have the same tables that we have on the formatted page, but we have them more disaggregated and not quite as neatly formatted, though these will still print out nice and neat if you so desire. We have it by national, rural, urban quintiles. And then importantly, we also have the decomposition. Now, I was telling you before in the formula, we have 3 different effects. We have the income effect, the own price effect, and the cross price effect. We've combined the own and price cross price effect here for simplicity. And now you can look at the isolated changes if you so desire. And you have the same options in the diet quality indicators. Now, the diet quality sheet provides even more detailed output than we were looking at before. Especially if you scroll down, we can actually look at the changes for individual food groups, their underlying numbers. These are basically the figures that are being displayed in the graphs, but now you can actually go into the numbers and look at exactly what is happening if you so desire. I'm not going to harp too much on these sheets, as we could be here all day. But again, we provide everything disaggregated by the different effects if you really want to dig into what's going on behind the scenes. But for now, let's stick with the overview file. And if you excuse me, I need a sip of coffee. Okay. So now coming back to the overview file, we can see that we've had a much different effect than when we just simply shocked household incomes. This is because when you're shocking food prices, you have to go through both the own price of the food and the cross price effects. Income effects tend to not have as many complicated interactions, especially when we're talking about food consumption. So here we've reduced food poverty by 1.5% by reducing staple prices. And we've had a pretty strong effect in rural areas, but we haven't really seemed to have much of an effect in urban areas. And in fact, for undernourishment, reducing staple prices seems to have very, very slightly increased undernourishment in urban areas. To me, this is an interesting story and definitely not a mistake. If you see this number, you might go, okay, this is interesting. This isn't what I would have expected from such a crisis or a policy action. Now we need to go in to see what's actually happening. And this is where we can dig into some of the more detailed results. So you see here that food consumption expenditure per capita increases when we decrease staple prices in rural areas, but it decreases in urban areas. Now, why would that happen? Why would decreasing staple prices in urban areas cause them to spend less money overall? Well, one option is that they're actually eating more expensive food groups. So we can go into the diet quality indicator and we can see that in urban areas, especially poorer households, have really increased their diet quality, but they haven't expanded into different food groups, but they have expanded into more sufficient food consumption. So what this is telling me, and if you wanted to dig into more of the details, you could, is that some of the trade-offs of decreasing staple prices is that some households may switch into other food groups which may be less calorie dense than staples. So you may end up with more registered undernourishment because households are no longer consuming as calorie dense foods because they don't need to consume so many staples anymore. But in fact, they're consuming more healthy foods. And one way we could look at this is trade-offs between consumption gaps. So we can see that we've decreased the staple food price, which has increased grains and starchy staples, but here it's also decreased dairy foods and fruit a little bit. But we've increased protein food consumption, and we've increased animal protein consumption, all by decreasing the price of staple foods. So to me, this really highlights one of the strong aspects of the tool, is that it allows the user to quite quickly think about the policy trade-offs, not just policy trade-offs, but the consumption and diet trade-offs of crises and policy shocks without having to do a lot of underlying math. Now, because we could also look at the poverty graphs. We can see that we decrease food poverty, or household expenditures get better in rural areas, not so much in urban areas, and the same for undernourishment as well. Now, I had planned to do another example, but I have talked for a very long time because I think I did more detail than I had intended to. So I am going to stop talking now and start taking questions immediately. So thank y'all. I'm going to stop sharing for now and come back as needed.
Thank you, Andrew, for that demonstration of the tool. And I'm actually finding it interesting just to have an Excel tool where you can be able to do simulation on income and price and get detailed impacts or just a direction on the food security indicators, and that is, let's say, the food poverty rates. And I think this is quite relevant, especially now where we are having different kind of shocks, and there's a lot of uncertainties, there's price changes, incomes are changing, and we will just want to deep dive and see what is it that we're getting out of the food security indicators, and how are people consuming calories, and how is the diet changing with all these crises. Even as we speak, for those who are in Kenya, we say that there's high cost of living, and how can we get to know how much this is affecting even our diets, and even the average adequate food groups that we're taking. Are we taking more fruits now or less of fruits? And I think this is quite interesting for us, and even to inform policy, and even further to the different households who are suffering more, who are gaining more in terms of urban and rural. But then I won't repeat the presentation, though. I just encourage ourselves to be able to ask questions through the question and answer platform. And Andrew, probably we have some interesting questions that are coming in, and we encourage more to come. And one of it is that if we do have, is it possible to even disaggregate this further in terms of the baseline to have arid and semi-arid under the rural and urban category? You understand the topology of our country. We have the urban and semi-urban, we have the arid and semi-arid areas, and we would want to see how these affect these areas uniquely. Also, we have another question, and in this is culturally neutrality across within countries, and this is a question on questioning the culture, the different culture and the behavior and response when you have the income and price shock. This incorporated in the tool, and how can this be implemented, probably using the tool. There's a question where we have, is the simulator have a manual for the user? Yes, it does. In the Excel sheet, we have the first page where we have the user guide. It's quite detailed, and probably if something is missed, we're interacting with the tool, you can feel free and get in touch with us. But I think the manual is quite comprehensive. And interestingly, also, Andrew, we've been asked if you're testing these up in the LAC regions, and if you have this in Spanish version. It's interesting to see there's even interest in having this in Spanish. Probably I'll give you, Andrew, this opportunity to respond to the questions, and as we also get more from the participant. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the questions. Okay, to the arid and semi-arid areas. Yeah, we actually had a good conversation with this at the KIPPRA launch event, which of course was all about the assholes. And right now, no. Right now, the simple answer is no. It does not account for that, because, and the reason is that we really wanted to keep the outputs of the tool simplified. And so the tables themselves, as you can see, are already getting a little dense in terms of outputs. And we didn't want to then, so think about it this way: is we have rural, urban areas and a bunch of quintiles, then we have to disaggregate again by arid and semi-arid lands. The tables can get very dense very quickly. But what I will say is that after attending the KIPPRA conference, we do have some momentum on potentially creating 2 new versions of the tool. So the tool itself is extremely flexible in terms of the sample that the input. So right now we input a nationally representative sample, and this is the national tool, and all the outputs are represented at the national level. If instead we desired to create 2 different versions of the tool, one that's representative for ASL areas and one that is for non-ASL areas, and so then we would have 3 versions of the tool, this is totally doable. It's totally demand driven. If this is something that we see a lot of demand for from you guys, then we will do it. That's as simple as that. It's just whether or not people want it. So yeah, totally doable. Just gotta keep bugging us for it. Cultural nutrition. We don't explicitly account for cultural nutrition and diets, but we do account for it. And I'll explain how we account for it. Is that we take a lot of care in estimating our food demand elasticities, and we estimate these food demand elasticities at the household level. These elasticities are calculated using a lot of different inputs, and I won't go too far into them. But basically, we look at how each individual household responds to a change in their income and their price for food consumption for 15 different food groups. And if we've done our work correctly, which I believe we have, this will account for at least some level of the cultural dietary preferences within that household. The whole point of estimating these elasticities in such detail is that we want to understand this household level preferences. Now, to make the tool run a little bit smoother, and we don't do the micro simulation at the household elasticity level, because some of the elasticities, you get such a wide range of elasticities that the tails can really drive the conclusion. So instead, we calculate a median elasticity for the rural, urban, and quintile levels, and we use those. Now, that might kind of flatten out some of the cultural nutrition preferences, but inherently they're in there. We've estimated these elasticities at the household level, so the household level preferences will be accounted for. And then finally, it's having the tool in Spanish. Great, I'd love to. I speak a little Spanish, not nearly enough to do this. My wife is fluent, but she's too busy. So maybe maybe we'll get somebody to do it. Again, this is demand driven. If we see a lot of demand for the, I mean, this whole tool was demand driven. People, they came to us and we said, hey, we want a simple tool for doing these kind of micro simulations. We said, great, that sounds awesome. Let's do it. So if we see a lot of demand for a Spanish language version of the tool, then yeah, let's do it. And before I pass back to you, June, I realized that you had asked me to show how to download the tool. It wasn't in my original plan. So let me quickly share my screen and I will show that. So there is a link in the chat that will take you to this website, the Food Security Simulator Kenya. If you scroll down, this has a brief information, some related resources, and then download now. This will take you to the Dataverse page, which has even more information, more descriptions, and you can come down here, and here they are. These are the two files. Now, it's very important that you download both files together. The files have many linkages, specifically the tool linking to the results overview page. The files need to be downloaded together and put in the same folder wherever you download them to. Do not split them apart. If you split them apart, the links will break and it can turn into a mess. It's fixable on your end, but you need to know what you're doing, and it's just a lot better. Just download the two files together and put them in the same place, and then you're done. So that's all you got to do. And now I'll pass back to you, June.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew, for responding to that and also showing us how to download. And just to mention that you can download this in your laptops and also on your phones or tablets. You don't require any registration, just follow the link and you download as we've been told. Just to take more questions, we have one from Dora. Is income shock the only data you can key into the food security simulator? Probably I can answer this, Dora. It is also, we have also the price shock for the different commodities, food commodities. We have the 22 kind of the different groups of food, which you can also shock. And probably a question to Andrew, this maybe to ask is that can we be able to simulate price shock and income shock together, or is advisable to do one price shock, then you do the income shock? I think this, Andrew, you can guide us. There's also another long question here from Philip Musioka, who says that I computed elasticity, that is the quads for 13 food groups from 0506 data. I suppose this is the data set for KIBS 0506 data, and went ahead to simulate the welfare effects from 07 to 10 price spikes. Could this model be extended to the computation of the welfare effect, as these are the more direct related to the targeted safety nets program? So Andrew, this question is directly to you. And then we have another one that is asked by Odanga, that what innovative approach can be incorporated into the policy model to address food security challenges? So you also have that question. Let's have more coming in, but then Andrew, probably you can come in, and Olivia, if there's something else you can also add on those questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, June. All right, so to the first one, combining income and price shocks. Yes, totally doable. We have them on separate sheets so that you don't get everything conflated, and to some extent, it may be slightly recommended to try to isolate the price and income shocks separately if possible, because you can kind of lose the effects a little bit, especially in the overall on the concise overview tables. But there is absolutely nothing stopping you in kind of trying to look at a combined price and income shock. In fact, I think it would be very interesting to see what would happen if we think incomes decrease by something, but then prices are increasing, you know, and you can then isolate certain food groups, and you can, that's the whole point, is we want this tool to be flexible. Again, we have warnings about not shocking things too highly, but absolutely go ahead and combine income and price shocks, see what you get, write about it in a blog. It sounds great to me. To the question on welfare effects, not totally, I might be misunderstanding the question, but whether or not the simulator can be used to estimate household welfare effects, and the short answer is not directly. We have a specific number of outputs that we look at. We've kind of tailored these because we think these are the most interesting outputs for food security, dietary diversity, and calorie consumption. Because that's the point of the tool that we're working on, is that we're good, and we wanted to share our expertise in food security and food security indicators, not necessarily household welfare indicators. Now, again, if demand if demand is there and we wanted to do a household welfare simulator of some kind, we can talk about that. You know, the architecture is here, the platform is here. We can certainly take a step back and think about creating a new version which has different outcomes more related to related other outcomes, different outcome indicators related to other topic areas. And then the third question, I don't think I really understood, it related to incorporating food security challenges into policy. I mean, please correct me or clarify if I'm not understanding. But I mean, the idea behind the tool is that we look at the food security outcomes of different shocks, be these crises or policy incomes, through the lens of shocks to different food groups and household incomes. That's what the tool does. The whole point of the tool is that it will elucidate some of the food security trade-offs, the food security outcomes, different indicators, through the lens of these complex microsimulations, taking very simplified inputs. So that's the idea. So I believe we are trying to address food security policy challenges through the tool, but maybe I may be misunderstanding the question. Olivia, if you have anything, chime in.
No, I think I'm good. I just wanted to comment a little bit on the first questions regarding, or the first three questions that you got, which were related to ASAL and the other aspects. You know, because this tool is a data-driven tool and a data-driven exercise, everything boils down to what kind of input data we are having. We are working with the Kenya Integrated Household Budget Survey, and of course we need to have a level of representation. So it matters how those surveys are constructed, at which level are they representative. And according to my understanding is that at least the last version of that survey, it was not designed to be representative within each of these regions by arid and semi-arid areas and non-arid and semi-arid areas. So here we need, we need to have that level of representation to really reflect that disaggregation in our tool. And that also relates back to the second and third question that you got. It really depends mostly on the data that go into this one. But technically from the tool, we are very flexible in how we design that tool and what outcome indicators are there. Yeah, I'll leave it with that. Over to you.
Thank you, Olivia, for also answering those and just reaffirming the answers. Just to mention probably on what innovative approaches that can be incorporated. This is one of it. This is a tool that will help us in just informing policy or directions for policy. And the bigger task is with us, the researchers and policy researchers, because then we are supposed to know where these shocks are coming from and what informs this policy. So this was just a demonstration where Andrew showed us, let's say 15%, but then it is you and I and the researchers to know what percentages of these shocks are and where do we get these percentages. Is it a policy that has been made by the government? Is it the prices that are changing, and what percentages? So we just been handed over the tool for us, and then the other task is for us to just use it and make informed decision. And so the challenge is thrown to us to use it and inform. And just that being said, the other more questions that are coming in, Andrew, and one of it is also is asking, is the model flexible to be customed to observe other policy changes by prediction other than the intended food policy, like say employment shock, and predicts the outcome after introducing the shock? So maybe just to answer if we can have other shocks incorporated in this tool. And also there's another question from Odhiambo. Good tool from Andrew, though it doesn't provide a sustainable solution of food deficits. Increasing household income and reducing stable prices are not sustainable in the long run. Thank you. And I think because of time, Andrew, you can just mention this quite fast as you're wrapping up. And just to remind our participants that hope you've already downloaded the tool and trying to input some of these shocks, and just to go through the tool and to interact with it as we move on, so that we get to the interesting part where we get to announce something about the tool. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I actually really like these two questions together. They kind of work well together. So this is perfect. So I'm actually going to start by first not answering the first question yet, and actually piggybacking on what June was saying, because it helps inform the answers to the next two questions. And that is that I should have mentioned this in my presentation, but she did it for me, is that the tool is agnostic as to where the shocks themselves are coming from. It is a tool. That's it. You have to know how to use the tool. And so you need to come up with the price shocks. You need to come up with the income shocks. We don't care where those come from. You can completely make them up. You can be getting them from government data. You can be getting them from a separate model that you've used to calculate something that you think would be affecting household incomes and prices. And that is how you would incorporate an employment shock. There's no other way to incorporate shocks into the model beyond the price and the income shocks. That's it. That's what we have right now. That's how our food demand elasticities work. That's the point of the tool. But what you can do is, if you have an employment model it's going to produce some outputs on, or some impacts on household incomes, food prices, it's going to have a lot of different outputs. You take those and you run them through our tool, and you get impacts on food security. So that's the idea, is that it's supposed to be a model that helps you take the next step to take a shock, be it a crisis, a policy, or another model that you're trying to model some other kind of shock or crises, and figure out the food security and dietary diversity outcomes of those shocks, of those outputs. Now, to the second point on long run stability, yeah, I mean, this is not a long run model. This is a short-term impact model. It's a fairly simple microsimulation using rigorously calculated food demand elasticities, but it is not a CGE model. It's not dynamic. It's not recursive. It does not incorporate long-run trends, inflation. It doesn't do these things. It takes short-term shocks to prices and incomes. Again, we don't care where you get these from. It's a tool. You decide on them, and it shows you the short-term impacts of those shocks. That's it. But we think that's a big thing. Like, that's a great thing. We've used the example a number of times in presenting this tool, but the grain crisis from the Ukrainian war was a devastating short-term shock to food prices and household incomes. We needed a quick response tool to be able to figure out what the impact of these shocks was going to be. Not necessarily in the long term, we want to know that too, but we needed to know what the short-term impact was going to be on household food security and household food demand, and address that immediately. So that's the point of this tool, is that it's relatively simple, short-term analysis, but still a powerful tool for doing policy, for doing very quick first cut policy evaluations.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And see, time is catching up with us. We wish to have more time to discuss about the tool. There's some interesting questions and insights that are coming from the participants, but also just continue asking them from our Q&A session. Andrew, you can be able to text back through the chat as we continue. So the next session that you're going to have is where we're going to announce the blog writing competition. So you've been exposed to a tool that you can use for policy, but then just to use it and utilize it and just make decisions and policy and inform. We have a challenge with us to have, and I will invite Dr. Olivier Ecker, who is a senior research fellow from IFPRI, to announce to us the blog competition and what is expected and who are eligible and what we have at the end of this training and blog writing competition. Thank you and welcome, Olivier.
Thank you, June. I hope you can all see my slides now. So it's indeed my pleasure to announce this blog writing competition. And Andrew has introduced to you the tool. So we would like you now to participate in this blog writing competition and use that tool really to formulate or to develop certain scenarios that could be addressed with that tool. So I would like to tell you a little bit what is this blog writing competition about. It is really there to learn and to showcase the application of the food security simulator for Kenya to analyze real-world policy scenarios of household income and food price shocks in Kenya. Andrew gave you one example, which was the Ukraine crisis, but you can think of many other potential policies or certain interventions. Let it be a cash transfer program, or you can think about a certain subsidy for certain foods, etc., etc. So it would be up to you to come up with an interesting story. So what are you to do if you participate in this competition? First of all, you should select a food policy relevant research question, or as we call it, a problem. That can be an actual one or a hypothetical one for looking into the future, for example. And you use that problem and the tool to really develop the blog story. Now, who is eligible to participate in this competition? In fact, everybody who is in this virtual room and enjoyed Andrew's training just before. So what will we do with the submissions? So we decided that the top 3 blogs will be published on the CGIAR NPS website, and the winner, so the best blog, will be eligible for a short-term industrial attachment or mentorship at IFPRI's Kenya office. What do you need to do is you just need to submit your blog story to the IFPRI Kenya CGIAR address, which is posted here, within 3 weeks. So the deadline is August the 10th. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the procedure. Once you have submitted your blog story, there will be a review committee consisting of KIPPRA, the University of Nairobi, IFPRI, who will review your blog and select the top 3 submissions. Then this review committee will request 1 round of revision before the final decisions and will provide feedback, and you please address those comments and return the revised blog within 1 week. Now, a good blog. What is a good blog? A good blog has certain features. It should be interesting and it should be easily accessible to a wide audience. The language should be concise and precise. And usually what we do is we use a conversational tone and certain keywords so that the audience can well understand the blog, and that also that blog is picked up in the internet through entering certain passwords or keywords. Now, a good blog is also limited in terms of the length. So 600 to 800 words is a good length. We do not accept blogs that are longer than 1,000 words sharp. So any word thereover will lead to a rejection. A good blog has also some visuals. So we would hope that in one of these blogs there could be 1 or maximum of 2 graphs or tables. A good blog has also a strong introductory paragraph that hooks the reader, and also a good concluding paragraph with clear evidence-based prediction recommendations or a call to action. Lastly, Here again, the food security simulator. If you haven't downloaded the tool yet, you can also use the QR code that you see on my slide here. Over to you, June.
Thank you, Olivier, for the announcement of the blog, and just to assure that all of us are eligible for the ones who are here on the virtual call to participate on the blog and just come up with interesting simulation to inform and dig deep to the issues of food security simulator. We at the end of our training session, it was interesting, but you see also there's some questions that were going on and answers through the chats, and it is my pleasure to just thank you all for participating in this training and participating and having interest on just learning about the new tool on the food security simulator. Just to inform you that we are quite pleased as a country because this is the first country that this tool has been developed, and your questions and interesting questions to improve the tool is something that we think through even when they are being done on other different countries. So you quite appreciated on your questions. Just to mention also that let's participate on the blog, and I think we all have the link and the tool, and we have been equipped with everything to write the blogs. I will thank you and appreciate the institutions that have co-organized this event, that is the University of Nairobi and KIPPRA, and the collaboration that we've been having. Thank you very much. I think at this time, I'll have to say bye. If it were a physical meeting, I think we could be having coffees and snacks, but here we are, virtual meeting. So everywhere you are, keep safe and see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you.